Hello all, today I'm making a Manzanita Burl ring on a tungsten carbide core. Manzanita is a pretty hard wood with a beautiful redness to it that you can't buy in a store. You can't buy it in a store because it grows more like a bush than a tree and it's really difficult to dry. Fortunately, even if the piece of Manzanita you mill and dry splits on you, you should still be able to get rings out of it. Even more fortunately, this is Manzanita Burl, which I got from my mother's cousin's husband, who stabilized it for me in exchange for a couple of rings made from the same wood, so I've got a bunch of leftover. I think most people who make rings like this probably make the hole in the blank on the lathe, but I don't trust myself enough to make a perfectly straight hole on the lathe, so I drill. When you drill the hole, it's important to use a drill bit smaller than the diameter of your ring core. Obviously, if it's larger, the hole will be too big, but if it's the same size, then the imperfection that comes with the act of drilling could also make the hole too big. Once you get your hole drilled, you need to carefully expand the hole's diameter to accept the ring core. To do this evenly, I wrap sandpaper around sockets that are smaller than the diameter of the hole and use that to sand the inside of the hole until it's just right. To make sure it's just right, I stop and check frequently to see if the core fits. If the hole is a little too small, then the wood can break as you're putting the core in or later down the road with seasonal wood movement. If it's too big, then there will be a noticeable gap in the form of a thick black ring between the wood and the metal. So there's a sweet spot you want, which may cause you to go through a few wood blanks to get it right. I believe that the sweet spot is a hole that's just big enough that you can gently beat the blank onto the core with a jeweler's hammer. To actually glue the ring in place, I like to wrap a tapered rod with wax paper, slap on the ring core, put thick CA glue on both surfaces, and finally gently hammer on the blank. This part can be a bit stressful because the CA glue obstructs your view and you want to make sure that the core is completely inside the blank. You also want to do your best to make sure the surface of the core is parallel to the surface of the blank. Once the CA glue is fully cured, you need to clean up the blank. The blank you used should have been a bit thicker than the core is wide, so now you need to remove that extra material so the ring can be held by the mandrel on the lathe. When doing this step, I stop and blast it with compressed air frequently because it gets really hot, which is uncomfortable to hold, but I also worry about the CA glue bond breaking down under the heat. After removing the excess wood, you still need to remove the glue from the part of the ring that touches the finger. This is actually one of the biggest reasons I like to use tungsten carbide. You can use a round metal file or any grit sandpaper without scratching the metal. If you use some other softer metal for the core, you'll need to be very careful when removing CA glue, and even then, you'll still need to polish it as a final step. Now that we're on the lathe, it's a bit more straightforward. You just need to get the wood down to the ideal thickness, which I think is somewhere between 2 and 3 millimeters thick, depending on the ring size. Once it gets down to about that thickness, you can shape it. It's okay to go a little smaller after shaping and sanding because the finish I use is Illumi UV, which is a very viscous, thick epoxy, and it will give you a little bit of that thickness back. The thing you want to be really careful about is not getting too close on the edges, as you don't want the metal to be visible on the surface of the ring. As for the grit to sand up to, I like to go to 320 or 400 and then use a non-woven pad to finish it off because they leave less visible scratches. Once you've done all that, you're ready for finish, and the first step is to clean the wood. I just hit it real quick with rubbing alcohol on a paper towel, then let it sit until the alcohol has completely dried. Next up, you could go directly to Illumi UV, but I like to do a quick coat with thin CA glue to help further stabilize the wood. To apply the CA glue, I put Scotch tape on the tip of a glove, and this seems a bit strange, but there are reasons behind it, and the reason for those reasons is how quickly the thin CA glue dries. So I get a tiny drop of CA glue on the tape and carefully transfer that to and spread it on the ring. I leave the drill running until the CA glue dries because it can form a drop at the bottom if you don't, and then it'll cure like that, and you obviously don't want that. After that cures, be sure to very gently sand it down with a non-woven pad to give the Illumi UV something to bond to. To apply the Illumi UV, I first let the can sit in a hot bath of water for about 10 minutes to thin it out, and then I use a tiny nylon brush to apply it and make sure to very carefully get the edges. Once you've got the entire surface coated, let the drill run for about a minute to make sure it levels out the brush strokes. The Illumi UV is an epoxy that cures in UV light, so now we stick it in a UV light bath. If you're lucky, there won't be any little bumps in the epoxy once it's cured, and you can just go straight to polishing like I did here. I use Meguiar's Plastic X polish with the little polishing pads that come with rotary kits, but you can probably use any plastic polish. I start out with low speeds to spread the polish around and then crank up the speed to actually do the polishing. And that's all she wrote. So here's the ring all polished up. If you'd like to order this or anything from me, feel free to start a conversation in the comments below or visit my website, which I've linked in the description.